I used to work for the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office here in Alabama, and this one time, we got a call about a guy with a knife walking up and down outside his house, threatening anyone who passed by. We show up. The guy's barefoot and in his underwear, and is clearly going through some kind of psychological episode. We're trained to de-escalate, but that's hard enough at the best of times, even with right-thinking people. Throw a little mania into the mix and, well, things get unpredictable. We pull up and get out of the car. I've got the lethal while my partner has the non-lethal, and we start trying to begin a dialogue with our suspect as per our de-escalation training. The guy is completely off the rails though, ranting and raving about his ex-wife and their deceased child. My partner is getting all sympathetic with the guy, asking him to put his knife down so they could talk about what had him so upset, and for a minute there, he seemed to calm down a little. But then, the next thing we knew, he was totally manic again, barking out all this racist stuff about his neighbors and how they were trying to kill him. And once again, we tried our best to talk him down while keeping our distance, knowing that a man of his size could potentially inflict a single fatal stab wound. He was at least 6'2", older but wiry and fueled by adrenaline, obviously. He would be able to close the distance between us in seconds. Unfortunately, he didn't seem to have a direct problem with us, and I quickly got the impression that if he were to stab someone, it probably wouldn't be me or my partner. Little did I know how right I was going to be. Witnessing it happen is something that has stayed with me, crystal clear in my memory for almost 20 years now. I remember the guy's voice shifting from angry and manic to tired and somewhat sad as he asked us if he would have to go to jail. We were honest with him because, as the saying goes, honesty is always the best policy. If you lie to someone in that state, they'll insist like a mule that you were trying to put the cuffs on them. And the best approach is to talk to them as if though you're on their side, explaining that going to jail is actually what will get them out of the volatile situation they've gotten themselves into. They might respond, saying things like, I can't go to jail. But often that's just the denial phase of accepting that they're about to be arrested. My partner and I try to guide the person through it, suggesting that they could be back out in hours and that if they couldn't secure a bail, they might receive credit for time served due to not having actually harmed anyone. I honestly thought this approach would bring him back down to earth. He was already calming down, and I believed that knowing that he wouldn't face severe consequences would allow us to cuff him without a struggle. However, instead of surrendering, the man looked at us with this really sad expression and said, I'm sorry, and then plunged the knife into his own neck. It felt like time slowed for a second or two as he did it. Initially, he held the knife facing downwards as if though he'd been preparing to stab someone on the sort of downward thrust. But then came the moment that he stopped, looked at the knife, and flipped it 180 degrees before gripping it tightly with both hands. You could see him trying to find the will to do it, trembling slightly before he drove it into his neck, and both my partner and I were shouting, don't do it, but it was futile. However, it wasn't just that he stabbed himself in his own neck, nor the sound that it made, this sort of sick crunch as he tore through the tough tissue in his throat. It was the fact that he pulled the knife out and did it again. My partner reacted before I could, using his stun gun to incapacitate the man before rushing over to control the bleeding. The worst part was watching him wait a few seconds for the stun gun to lose its charge before attempting to cover the wounds. As you can probably imagine, it didn't bring much success. Blood was literally squirting out from between my partner's fingers, and I don't think the man survived for more than a few minutes before my partner abandoned his attempts to stop the bleeding. He was pronounced dead at the scene, and by the time the EMTs arrived, the man looked like a ghost. If it weren't for the blood covering him, he would have been as pale as a sheet. He sort of laid there motionless, his eyes wide open as he tried to prevent the rest of the neighborhood from gathering around and taking pictures. There's something else you never get over. I understand the desire to know what's happening in your own neighborhood, but for people to take out their cell phones and start recording this man's final moments, that's something I can never comprehend. These videos end up online, watched by hundreds of thousands of people. It turns the worst day of someone's life for their final moments into some sort of spectacle, something to stare at through a screen before leaving a comment and moving on. I can't think of anything more disgusting, even if I tried. If you enjoyed this scary story, listen to thousands more, either over on the Let's Read YouTube channel or podcast.